Hello, it's Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to take a little detour from tarot content and I want to talk about another, I guess you could call this a practice. We're going to get a little bit personal because while this didn't start out as being a tool for personal growth, it has definitely turned into one. So a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a few months ago now, I went down the rabbit hole of diving into commonplace journaling. So the basic idea behind commonplacing is collecting bits and pieces of information, putting it into one sort of collection, or rather like a personal encyclopedia. From the research that I've done, it seems like it came from when books were very expensive and people couldn't afford to actually buy and keep books, so they would create these little commonplace books, which were collections, tidbits, quotes, things like that from books that they had read so that they could keep the information but not have to actually purchase the books. So it evolved from there into commonplace journaling. And there was a book put out by John Locke which really kickstarted this whole idea of commonplace journaling, which was the idea of collecting notes and quotes and things of that nature and then adding your own personal reflection to them. So John Locke wrote in his book, "Readers should not accept information simply because it comes from authorities. Supplement your reading with meditation and discourse. Good readers know what to keep and what to discard." Now, in my commonplace book here, I've got a couple of quotes on commonplacing just because this is where it all began for me. And the thing that really interested me about this was when I started looking at and thinking about commonplacing, I realized that I commonplace all the time in my phone. So I collect not only my tarot readings and, pictures of my dog and my family and whatnot, but I also collect quotes, art, screenshots, things that I see online. I realized as I was diving deeper into this idea of commonplacing that I am already commonplacing in my phone. The problem is once it goes into here and then it goes into the cloud, I rarely ever see it again. So I really wanted to create a commonplace book. And there is a distinction between a commonplace book, which this one happens to be, and a commonplace journal, which we'll look at here in a moment. Now, this whole practice, this is where it started for me. And if you're in my member space, you might have seen my video a few months ago when I went down this rabbit hole and I set these books up. I had a very specific idea for what I wanted to do with these books when I started. I had originally set out to make this B6 Leuchtturm a commonplace journal, which meant that I was going to collect quotes, bits from things that I saw, bits from things that I read in here, and then journal about those things. And then I was like, but for fun, I want to do a commonplace book too. And for the fun of it, I'm going to focus it around fandom. So I was like, I'll just collect fun fandom things and put them in here as a commonplace book. Now, keeping in mind, I'm making a very clear distinction between a book and a journal. A book is all quotes, nothing personal, no reflections, anything like that in there, whereas the journal was supposed to also include my personal reflections and my journaling. Now, interesting for me, these two things flip-flopped, and that really isn't the point of this video. What I wanted to share was kind of what came out of working with this process, because there's a lot of videos out there on commonplacing. There's going to be much better videos on how to commonplace, things that you might want to commonplace about, how to go about the process of it. That is not what this video is. I'll leave some links below to some of the videos that I watched. But what I wanted to talk about was what came out of this process for me, which was growth moments, which was anxiety management, which was an answer to doom scrolling, if I'm being perfectly honest about it. And so I wanted to share a little bit about how that process went. So as I was going through, and I will flip through my commonplace planner and journal here for you, I started out with this little Leuchtturm as creating these sections. So far, I have a section on commonplacing itself, writing, reading, planning, growth, and art. Growth is a really big catch-all category for me. I probably didn't need to really categorize these, but at the time that I created this, I was trying to follow the system that is generally used for commonplacing. So I started with some notes on commonplacing. I threw in some stickers, even though I told my members I wasn't going to worry about making this pretty. That didn't end up happening because part of journaling for me and part of commonplacing for me is the creative artistic act of it as well. So I've got just some quotes in here from various sources on commonplacing, like "The notebook lays bare a braiding of selves," like just some beautiful things. Here's a little quote from somewhere, and sometimes I am better at recording where I found them than others, but this one says, "ADH people screenshotting everything because they're afraid of losing ideas only to never look at them again because the archive is now its own overwhelming problem." This completely summed up how I felt whenever I looked at everything that I had saved in my phone. And I couldn't even remember why I saved some of that stuff. And just looking at it became an overwhelm and anxiety in its own. So I put that in here because that is how modern commonplacing in my phone started to feel to me. So then I have a little section on writing here, and you can see that I've started just like collecting various bits and pieces of things. Sometimes I do stamping, sometimes I add some washi. This, I had intended to journal about these things, and I didn't end up doing that. I just ended up putting the things in quotes that I found were interesting, little screenshots of things that I had saved, but like saved enough that I wanted to actually remember it, not just a temporary put it in my phone for a minute and then forget about it. The growth section got pretty big, and I just started kind of throwing anything and everything in here. And this is where I started to actually also incorporate some artistic stuff in here as well. And so I started just putting things in here, things that I wanted to remember, quotes that I wanted to keep, screenshots from things that I found on like Instagram or Tumblr. And I really had intentions of like journaling about this kind of stuff. But when I got in here and I found I put these things in here, I didn't really need to. I didn't feel called to journal about these things. I just wanted to keep them and just to have them in here. So then what I started to notice was that as I was shifting from not journaling in here to journaling in here, I started to use this book in particular and this process as a way to manage anxiety, overwhelm, or sometimes just to take a break from life and take a break from the chaos, from the busyness, and just come and play in here for a minute. Now, this little section is going to get a little personal, and I'm okay with that, so hopefully you are. I did start again with an index because I had intended for this one to be a commonplace book, meaning no personal reflections, just a collection of quotes, screenshots, things like that. What ended up happening was as I started moving through this book and moving through this work is I found that this was where the journaling wanted to happen for me. So I had started with a little bit about fandom, and these are all quotes that come from the book Starship Theraprize. Now this book is in particular about writing fan fiction and how fan fiction can be very therapeutic. That is definitely something that I use as a part of my own sort of processing and exploration. And I wanted to include some of those in there because there are some great quotes just about fandom in general. And again, still working with those quotes. And then I had started this, was like, okay, well, I'm going to create categories. And so I started with a few categories, and I had this one on like gaming together. I found this little image. This is actually Gale from Baldur's Gate 3. And oh my goodness, what's his name from Gravity Falls? And I just thought it was cute. And there was a little quote of watching someone play a video game and having someone watch you play a video game is an underrated way to spend quality time together. 100% agree with that. And as things started moving along, then I was like, oh, okay, well, of course I have to do it in a starting page, right? That'll just be fun. But as things started to move along, I started to play and I started to explore and I started to think about why I was saving these things, why I was pulling out the particular things that I did. And I let these pages kind of evolve however and whenever they needed to. And sometimes I would put things in here and then I would cover them up because it's not something that I decided I wanted to keep. So there might be a picture in here that I had and then I decided to actually expand on that idea. That happened a lot for me where I would grab like one particular screenshot, one particular picture, one particular quote, and I was like, nope, I need to expand on that further. So I'm gonna move it to its own page, cover it up with something else. These became collage pages. These became explorations into why I like the things that I do, why I like the characters that I like, why I feel connected to the things that I feel connected to. This is my Gale Bloodweave page because when Lisa and I first started playing BG3, we could not stand Gale as a character. And we've really come around to, really liking him and including him in a lot of our gameplays. And I wanted to explore that idea of why. Why did that happen? How did that happen? We have some characters that we only like in certain scenarios. So I explored that a little bit. This was a little just exploration I did on characters that have sort of an obsession. And I personally tend to be drawn to characters that are trying to work through some sort of trauma and they kind of create this hyperfixation around it. I think I've talked about hyperfixation quite a bit in my membership space because it's definitely something that I I wouldn't say struggle with, but it's a part of my life. I'm aware of it. I'm actively engaged with it. And so it's just, again, something that I like to be aware of. And this has definitely been helping me to find my way through with that sort of energy. Then I have some pages that are incredibly personal and significant to me. I've actually left this portion blank because I know that the journaling, the writing that I want to do around this energy that I put on this page is not something I want to show in a video. So I knew I wanted to create this video. I wanted to share this process in case it was helpful for anyone else, because this has been extraordinarily helpful for me to create this journal and to do this kind of work. But I had to have my own boundaries around that. So I've left intentional sections blank for some things that I do want to explore further later on in personal space. I have a page on my emotional support celebrity because like he's fun, and whenever I'm having a bad day, watching his stuff makes me feel better. I have a little page on some critical role stuff, and you can see that a lot of these pages are still in process. I'm still working on them. I add to them as I go, as things come up. So for example, I have this arcane page, and I've added to this along the way. This is more of a page about Jinx, which is a particular character that I have an association with, and then I have a little bit about Jinx and her family, and there are some associations around that. Again, I haven't done the exploratory journaling, but I've left space for it around and about the images that I've collected. Sometimes the images are just enough, and that's all I need. So here's more arcane. This is the Jace Victor ship, and then sometimes I bounce around because like this again is kind of more Bloodweave stuff, and it just gets mixed and mingled in here as I'm working through things. This is a start of my Stargate page. Again, I have another comfort show for me. This was actually all of my art that I've done so far. Well, not all of it, but a few pieces of art. So in addition to collecting other people's art, I decided to put my own in here. Then I have my Doctor Who page specifically with, David Tennant on this side. And then I have the little image that I did with Neil as Doctor Who, because I think he'd make an amazing Doctor Who. And I was just playing. And this is me processing, playing, and decompressing after a very stressful day. I think that's the last bit I have in here. And so what's really been interesting about this and this whole process is that as I've been going through here, I will just randomly open up my book, and I will just open up to a page and work in that page. Or alternatively, what I do a lot of times is I have been just collecting. This is everything that probably not everything that's on my phone currently, but you know how I showed you my photo gallery and my phone and what it looks like? That's just current. So what I do is I save stuff just whenever it comes up, whenever I find it, and then I put it all into one big Photoshop document, and then I print these on sticker paper, and then once I get a full page, I print them all out and I cut them all out. A lot of it is quotes, some of it is pictures, things that I find along the way, just things that I want to include, that I want to save. And then, because remember that quote from the beginning where I talked about how the archive itself becomes overwhelming, I actually delete all this stuff out of my phone. So once it gets printed, I delete it. Then it's here. Now I have it physically, and I can work with it and deal with it. And these are all my art, but I can do whatever it is that I feel like I need to do with it. So working in my Commonplace journal, the one where I'm including all the fandom stuff and my own reflections and all of that on it, has been really great for any time I feel that overwhelm. For any time I start like doom scrolling, or I start getting too into my own head about things, or I'm just emotionally overwhelmed, I will just come sit in here, open my book, look through what I've printed off, pick a page, and just work on it. And the Commonplace book has been an excellent one also for not only collecting things that I want to remember, but again, for helping me work through those moments where I am feeling a little bit off kilter. I can come here, I can do this portion without trying to add in my own thoughts, feelings, and reflections. I can just create on the page, and I don't have the pressure of journaling when I'm working in this one. And so that's a really nice change of pace when I'm feeling very overwhelmed by everything. Like I'm too overwhelmed to do a tarot reading. I just want to sit and I just need to take a break. And normally where I would sit and just scroll endlessly on my phone, which is 9 times out of 10 not a good place for me to be when I'm in that frame of mind, I come in here and I sit down and I work in this book. And I work with things that bring me joy, that bring me comfort, and they help me get through those challenging times. So while this whole process started out as a way to just play with commonplacing, because I went down a rabbit hole and I was like, this is fun and exciting and I want to explore it. It actually became a very valuable tool for me in terms of managing times of high stress, high anxiety, overwhelm, all of those moments where there was a bit of a struggle in trying to get through in that 5 minutes. But also, it was a great way for when I just want to chill, I just want to relax. And so it's really interesting how these two books have really evolved, because one of them I have journaling in, but I don't always journal about hard, challenging things. Sometimes I go in and I'm just like, oh, I love Doctor Who, I love David Tennant, I'm going to do a little page for him in my journal. There's no real emotional underpinning to this page, it's just a page for play. And I've really been enjoying having a dedicated space that I know that I can come in here and play if I want to come in here and play. It is so much healthier for me than scrolling through my phone. Granted, a lot of these come from Instagram and they come from Tumblr, and there are times and places because, like, let's be real, I'm not going to stop scrolling those things, but it has changed the way that I scroll and the things that I look at and what I engage with when I am online, because now I'm looking for what's meaningful for me in the moment, and then I can print those off and I can bring them in here and I can further explore those things. So it's really changed the way that I scroll, because I'm always scrolling now looking for that content that's going to nourish my soul, rather than looking at the content that creates more anxiety for me. It's really helped me to focus on the positives where that's concerned. This little book in here has really helped me to work through some personal issues. Helped me to work through challenging times, but it's also just a fun place for me to go. I love just opening this up and seeing all my favorite things in here, even when I'm talking about things that are hard, even when I'm looking at challenging aspects of my life and my own growth process. It's still fun and engaging and very meaningful for me to come in here and look at these things. And I love just sitting down with a page and just doing whatever I feel like in the moment on that page, or if there's a particular energy or a particular space that I'm feeling in, I can really focus in on that and let this really reflect that. And then having just the Commonplace book also as a place to really play without that emotional underpinning. And this is a great place for me to come and when I just need to chill. And so I can sit down with stickers and quotes and pictures and just have a play in these pages and let them kind of just evolve however it is they're going to evolve. I mean, I did start off with an index and I do have divided up sections, but like, truth be told, that's just because that was how I thought I had to create a commonplace journal. So while I do kind of pull things in if they happen to be in a section I already wrote in here, I don't know that I will continue sectioning it off in that way. I think I'll just let the pages kind of flow organically and be whatever it is that they want to be in the moment. And that's working really well for me. So I just wanted to come on and share a little bit about my commonplacing practice, because it's actually been a really important tool in my growth work, as well as just a fun creative exploration for when, I have a little bit of free time and I don't want to work, but I don't want to like dive into all the nitty gritty personal stuff. I just want to have a play. And this has been a fabulous place to do that in. So I just wanted to share that in case that would be helpful for anybody else. I would definitely encourage anybody who enjoys journaling, enjoys paper crafting. I mean, you probably could do this in a phone, in a digital document, like a GoodNotes or something. But if you think about it, like Instagram is a commonplace book. So if I go to my Instagram, this is also a commonplace journal, because I am sharing pieces and parts of things that I do, of my practice, things I see, things I have, and then I'm also sharing when I post these things in the little comments or in the description, what they mean to me and why I'm sharing them. So Instagram is a commonplace journal. And most people use it that way. It's just not a language that we have developed around this type of work. And so it's been really an interesting experience for me to take that idea of what I've been doing on my phone anyway, which did get very overwhelming because I had so many photos I couldn't even find what I was looking for most of the time, because not only do I have photos of my reading and my kids and my pets and all of that, and this flower I saw and this rock I found, I had screenshots upon screenshots of things that I had saved, quotes that I wanted to keep and remember, but then they were just lost in all of that. They were just lost in the cloud, essentially. And so I wanted to pull them out of the cloud and put them somewhere physical where I could work with them, where I could get my hands on them, where I could explore them and understand them and think about why I saved those things that I saved, and then to keep them in a place that was accessible to me. And so this started off as I just want to play with commonplacing and collect the things, into like a whole practice in itself. And it's been a really nourishing one, and I've really been enjoying it. I've also found that once I put something in here, deleting it out of my phone, out of my cloud, just getting it off of my digital plate, so to speak, has really been helpful, because when I do go back through my phone and I do try to go through my photos or things that I'm looking for, readings or whatever, I'm not lost in all of that other stuff. That quote I said at the beginning, I wish I could remember where I saw it, but I wrote it down a long time ago, how the archive itself can become a source of anxiety. That was very much where I was at with my phone and the things that I was saving there. So that really helped me to navigate that. So whenever I'm having a thought or a feeling, I can come in here, or if I just want to sit down and have a play, I can come in here. And if I feel like journaling, I can journal. And if I don't have to. That's why I've got them divided up into 2 different books, because they definitely have different feels for me. I know if I'm working in my Commonplace book, I'm not going to be doing any personal reflections. I'm just going to be sort of artistically collaging the things that I found. And if I'm working in my Commonplace journal, then I'm going to be exploring those things in a little bit more depth on a personal level. If you currently have a commonplacing practice, I would love to know all about it. So definitely share with me in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.